good to be back in St. Louis, and what a delicious meal we just had here.
Well, that's good. Hey, and it's delicious having you here and seeing a lot of old friends, because you had so many great matches in St. Louis. You must have some good memories of this town.
I've got a lot of fond memories of St. Louis, not only of St. Louis, but like you said, all the different people that I've wrestled here over the years, and coming here so many times, made a lot of great friends here in St. Louis, and it's always been, always had a really fond memories of it, and I always thought a lot of Sam Mushnick. He was a great man, and Sam was always a pleasure to work for, and very professional, and it was just great to come here. And St. Louis is like the wrestling capital of the world, as everyone knows, and it was an honor for everyone to come here and get to wrestle for Sam.
Of course, Jack Brisco, as you know, he was a national collegiate champion from Oklahoma State University, and he went on to win this gold belt July 20th, 1973 in Houston, Texas, when he defeated Harley Race. This gold belt went around Jack Brisco's waist as the world heavyweight champion. But before that, before the National Collegiate Championship, Jack Brisco was a kid in Blackwell, Oklahoma, just like me and like a lot of you fans, and you fell in love with wrestling. How did it happen?
Oh, I was a big wrestling fan. Watch it in Oklahoma. It'd come on Saturday night, 10 o'clock on Saturday night. I was always in front of the TV, and on every weekends, we'd go up to the corner drugstore and look through all the magazines. I looked through all the magazines and read all the stories about them, and all the different guys that are in different parts of the country, and of course, Lou Thez was my idol. I thought he was the greatest thing in the world, which he was. And Danny Hodge had just started wrestling pro, and I'd followed Danny's career through the University of Oklahoma. And me being a wrestler, Danny was one of my idols also. And I was thrilled when he turned professional. I started watching him on TV, and of course followed him through the magazines. But I actually became a huge fan through the magazines.
Really? Yeah, so did I. We probably were reading the same magazines back in those days. Wrestling Review.
I wouldn't doubt it. I'm sure they were. But another one of my, two of my favorites were the bad guys, Skull Murphy and Brute Bernard.
I remember them, Skull Murphy and Brute Bernard. See, we have a little history here. Now, when you moved from the collegiate ranks to professional ranks, was this something that was in your mind all along as you were an amateur wrestler at Oklahoma State University? Is this something you knew you wanted at that time?
Yeah, I knew from high school, from becoming a pro wrestling fan, and through idolizing Lou Thez and Danny Hodge. I thought, man, this would be the great life to do. And I always wanted to, I loved amateur wrestling. And I thought, well, if I'm good at this, I would love to go ahead and turn professional, and follow in Lou's footsteps and Danny's footsteps. And so every time when I was in college, wrestling in college, every time I would get a newspaper interview or a TV interview, and I would always tell them in there that when I'm through with amateur wrestling, I want to be a pro wrestler. So.
Well, and Jack Brisco certainly did that, and did it well, because he ended up with this around his waist. And part of the success was, of course, he had great success in Florida, and eventually you came to St. Louis. August 15th, 1969 was that first match here in St. Louis. Golly, can you even remember back that? Were you excited? Were you nervous? Did St. Louis mean anything special to you at that point in your career?
Yeah, St. Louis was very special. St. Louis, coming to St. Louis was one of my goals, because all the wrestlers wanted to come to St. Louis, because it was just such a hotbed, and all the top talent in the world was here every other week to wrestle here, and to come to St. Louis and make it in St. Louis was a really big deal, and it was something I strived for and something I worked for.
And of course, one thing about St. Louis, I think through the years, and you can look back in the history of St. Louis wrestling, one thing Sam Mushnick did, he would give young talent, if it was good, he'd give you a chance, he'd give you the ball and see how far you could carry it. But you made it up there enough to become the world heavyweight champion. Let me throw out some names to you, people you worked with over the years here in St. Louis. Just gut feelings, quick reactions, what you thought of them. Gene Kiniski.
Woo, Big Thunder. He hurts you every time you get in the ring with him. Gene was a huge man and a great talent. Of course, he was a world champion himself. And thing about Gene, I used to try to tire a lot of these guys out. The guys were big and strong, and this fast guys, I try to wear them out. That was one of my long suits. But with Gene, you could never wear Gene out.
That's what Lou Thesz said. He said Kiniski just had incredible stamina.
You couldn't even get Gene tired. He could go all night long.
He got you tired.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got me tired just trying to get him tired.
Well, you had some great matches with him, and one of the things I can remember we talked about in the early 70s, the first 3 times you wrestled Gene Kiniski, he got the best of you. The 4th time, you were the world heavyweight champion. You got the best of him. I still remember that crowd reaction. Kiel Auditorium was sold out when you finally got that big victory over Gene Kiniski. In St. Louis, it meant so much to you. It really legitimized, hey, Jack Brisco is the champion.
Yeah, I was very proud of that night. And I'd seen Gene around the country as a kid just starting out, and Gene having a belt. And I'd seen him in Texas, I'd seen him in Oklahoma and Arkansas, and he'd having that big gold belt on, the world champion. I thought, man, one of these days, that's what I want to be. And Gene would always tell me, even just as I started out, I said, kid, one of these days, you're going to have this belt.
Yeah,
and I'd just laugh, and he'd laugh. A few years later.
He was right. Pat O'Connor.
Pat O'Connor, a great wrestler, good guy, funny guy. And I always liked Pat because Pat would always tell the greatest stories. He was a great storyteller. And I had been to New Zealand, and of course Pat was from there, and we always talked a lot about New Zealand. I really liked New Zealand while I was there. It was a beautiful place. And, just really loved it there, and I'd always kid Pat about New Zealand and everything. When Pat was a great guy and a great wrestler.
A wrestler very much like you in terms of the scientific style, a lot of mat work, exciting mat work. We throw out another name, a little bit different, the guy you won the belt from, Harley Race.
Harley was probably one of the toughest guys that I ever faced. Harley wouldn't quit for anything. You'd have to kill Harley and make him quit. And
Yep.
he was one of the hard-headedest, most focused guys I've ever seen. And he took the wrestling business very seriously. And Harley would hurt you if you tried to get out of hand with him.
A lot of his moves were a little unorthodox for the time, and now you see wrestlers, things that he did maybe for the first time, a diving headbutt, different types of suplexes. Everybody does it.
That's true, and I remember several times, and Harley would slam me, and he'd start climbing up that top rope, and I'd be trying to get up, and he'd dive head first at me, and I thought, oh man, I hope he don't hit me in the mouth.
Speaking of being slammed on the mat, I can't help but bring up the Kiel Auditorium ring. Was that the hardest ring you ever worked in your life, was the Kiel Auditorium ring?
It was the hardest ring I worked in, and also it was one of the largest.
One of the biggest, 24 by 24.
Yeah, it was huge, and a lot of times it'd throw off your timing a little bit because it was such a large ring. But the center of it, I think it must have had a post in it or something. Because every time you get body slammed in the center of that ring, you could feel it all the way to the toes.
Oh yeah, it was a hard ring. Okay, one name you were certainly attached with here because you wrestled him so often, Dory Funk Jr. Those were great matches between Jack Brisco and Dory Funk Jr.
Yeah, Dory, our styles were very similar, and of course, Junior being a second-generation wrestler, and his dad taught him an awful lot, and he learned an awful lot on his own. He was a much better wrestler than his dad was, and his dad was more of a brawler, and Junior, when he was first started out, got to work with guys like Kiniski and O'Connor and Thez. So he learned all the technical part at an early age, which helped carry him through the World's Championship and many years of being successful. And I really enjoyed wrestling Junior because it was always a good, hard-fought match and exchanging holds and just getting after it, and a lot of mat wrestling.
5 times you and Dory Funk Jr. went the hour in St. Louis, 5 times. And I can still remember some of those matches, whether it be him trying to reverse your figure 4 leg lock or you countering the spinning toe hold. I can remember 10,000 people at Kiel Auditorium coming out of their seats together to roar. That had to be a feeling in the ring, that reaction of the crowd, didn't it?
It was a great feeling, and it was great to have the fans of St. Louis behind me and trying to counteract the spinning toe hold. I owe a lot to Pat O'Connor for that. Pat flew to Florida one time and spent a week in Florida working out with me, trying to, he knew how badly I wanted to win the World's Championship from Junior, and Pat came to Florida, and on several occasions, one time we flew down there for an entire week, and for a week we worked on reversing the spinning toe hold, and it helped me tremendously.
Let's mention one other guy who as you were a little bit further along in your career, he was really just starting out and certainly had a long and storied career, but you wrestled him here 2 or 3 times, Ric Flair.
Yeah, Rick was great, man. Rick was, he was truly the nature boy.
He was the nature boy. He lived his image.
He lived his image, and Rick was a great athlete and a great wrestler, and he had the heart, he had the desire. He wanted it as bad as I did, and you could just tell right away that when I first saw Rick here that he was going to be a great wrestler.
And I have to mention the guy that you idolized, and you got to wrestle early in your career. You told me about. We can't probably talk enough about him, Lou Thez.
The greatest of all time. Lou was just the greatest. He was not only a great wrestler and a great champion, but he was a great man too. He was a very highly intelligent man, and he loved the wrestling business more than anything in the world. And Lou could tell talent when he seen it. And a lot of the young guys that had a lot of talent, Lou would go out of his way to help them out and teach them and tell them the pitfalls and
he helped you too because he knew you had the talent.
He helped me a great deal, and I owe Lou a lot. And he is one of the greatest wrestlers I think that ever lived.
Now, on the other side of the coin, we'll mention one other name because you drew a lot of money here with him. Had some big matches with him. A different style, Dick the Bruiser.
Dick the Bruiser, yeah. Well, he was one of the guys I grew up studying the magazines over, seeing him in the magazines everywhere. So when I first wrestled him, I would just thought it was a dream come true. I couldn't believe I was actually in the ring with Dick the Bruiser.
A little bit different than O'Connor or Thez or Dory.
Yeah. I just, every time he moved, I'd flinch and see where he was or where he was going or what he was doing. And as soon as he'd grab a hold of me, first thing he'd do is try to throw me out of the ring. And here he'd come out on the floor and pounding you into the floor and then throw you back into the ring. As soon as he'd throw you back in the ring, he'd follow you in and throw you out the other side.
Out the other side. We should mention, Jack, you have written a book. It's called Brisco. And this is something that any wrestling fan of St. Louis, any wrestling fan from around the world has to take a look at this. It's for sale, highspots.com. On highspots.com, take a look right there, highspots.com. You want to take a look at this book, Brisco, because I know, and all the fans of St. Louis know everything that Jack Brisco did in this town, how much he meant to the success of wrestling in this town, how much he added to the prestige that this sport had in St. Louis, thanks to Sam Muchnick, Lou Thez, and people like Jack Brisco. Jack, it's an honor to be back here with you.
Thank you very much, Larry. Good to see you again.
It's been fun.
Thanks for the meal.
Oh, thank you.